Yo, what is up guys, Lord Seno here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about medium weapons. As you're probably aware at this point, medium weapons are the most popular weapon class in Deepwoken, and they're home to the most edgy weapon in the game, the Shattered Katana. The Shattered Katana has, for the longest time, been the pinnacle of endgame weapons, and it's pretty much just been meta for the entirety of the game's duration. But over time, it's been getting a lot of nerfs, and recently it got one to its attack speed, so people have been asking whether Shattered Katana is still the best medium weapon in the game, and if not, then what is? In the recent massive update, two new medium weapons were added to the endgame, which were the Forgotten Gladius and the Sacred Hammer. Essentially right now, there are four viable endgame medium weapons: the Shattered Katana, the Sacred Hammer, the Forgotten Gladius, and the Riflespear. These weapons are all viable and they all have their own advantages, and no one will bat an eye at you for using one of them in endgame combats. There's also the Serpent's Edge, which is pretty good, but it's a level below these weapons, as it's pretty much just a worse version of the Shattered Katana. Essentially, in the endgame, you're left with a choice between these four weapons. However, if you have an enchant on a mid-game or a mid to endgame weapon like the Serpent's Edge or the Razor Cutlass, then you can use that instead. So a question I've been getting a lot is, what is the best medium weapon right now, considering the fact that Shattered Katana has been getting lots of nerfs? And is Shattered Katana still the best medium weapon? Well, there's no definitive answer to that question. Unlike my video where I outlined the maths between which weapon star type was the best, where it was mathematically provable that the damage star type is the best, in this case there's no way to prove that one weapon is better than another, because the stats are different for each category. So for example, the Forgotten Gladius has less damage than Shattered Katana, but it swings faster, so how do you determine which weapon is better? How do you know whether the difference in attack speed is enough to make up for the difference in damage? Well, that is a subjective analysis. You have to make a decision for yourself ultimately, but I do have my own opinions on which medium weapon is the best, and I plan to go over that in this video. Before I give my opinion though, let's go over what the community thinks. So I posted a poll to my community tab, and I asked people what the best medium weapon was. Nearly 5,000 people voted, and the majority of people said that the Shattered Katana was the best weapon, followed by the Riflespear in distant second place. These results are not surprising at all, as the Shattered Katana is the most popular weapon in the player base. Like I said before, all four of these weapons are viable in endgame combats, and they all have their advantages. So let's start with the bread and butter Shattered Katana. When calculating these stats, we're going to be assuming that you have 100 points into medium weapon. The Shattered Katana has 25% penetration, 8 range, 0.73 attack speed, and 34 damage. 34 damage is the highest of any medium weapon, only rivaled by Riflespear. 25% pen is also the highest of any medium weapon. Once again, it's rivaled by only Riflespear. So in terms of doing the most damage in one hit, Shattered Katana is number 1. It does the most damage per second of any medium weapon, and if you want to kill something the fastest, then this would be the weapon to go for. However, the Shattered Katana is not without its weaknesses. The Shattered Katana has an attack speed of 0.73, which is slower than nearly every medium weapon, and slower than the Freshy Sword. You may say that the attack speed difference is only 0.02, but the thing is, if you have a slower sword, and someone swings at the same time as you, the attack priority will make it so that they hit you first, and in many situations your enemy will be able to get a free hit off, and you'll lose the trade. For that reason, having a slower attack speed, even if it's by 0.02, it's going to be slower than 90% of the medium weapons, which is a big disadvantage. So overall, the Shattered Katana is pretty good. It's the standard weapon for medium. It does a lot of damage, has some pretty decent range, and is slow to boots. Let us now compare it to its brother-in-arms, the Sacred Hammer. The Sacred Hammer has 10% penetration, 15% lower than the Shattered Katana's 25% penetration, and 34 damage, which is 0.9 lower than Shattered Katana's 34 damage. When you account for the Sacred Hammer's less penetration, the Sacred Hammer does 2.3 damage less than Shattered Katana. This amounts to about 7% less damage than the Shattered Katana. The Sacred Hammer has the same 8 range and the same 0.73 attack speed, so you may be wondering, what am I actually getting, considering the fact that I'm doing 7% less damage? Well, stats do not tell the entire story with weapons, because if that was the case, then the Sacred Hammer would just be a direct downgrade to the Shattered Katana, and I can tell you that it isn't. Yes, the Sacred Hammer does 7% less damage than the Shattered Katana, but it does have some advantages. Here's the first one. Like its brother weapon, the mace, Sacred Hammer has one of the weirdest animations in the game, especially for a medium weapon. It looks really janky, and this can catch your enemy off guard and lead to you getting free hits in. The second advantage that the Sacred Hammer has is the fact that its critical is actually a blunt critical. For weapons like the mace and the Sacred Hammer, these blunt criticals will actually instantly guard break your opponent no matter how much posture they have. Landing a critical will also daze your opponent, making it really hard for them to run. The Sacred Hammer is a really good weapon. It's very similar to the Shattered Katana. It does do less DPS, but it has a better critical and a more unreactable swing animation, which can lead to enemies messing up their parries. The Sacred Hammer is my favourite medium weapon, although the stats don't suggest that it's the best. Next, let's move on to the Forgotten Gladius. Like the Sacred Hammer, the Forgotten Gladius is a new weapon, which was recently introduced in the new updates. The Forgotten Gladius has 10% penetration, 8 range, 0.8 attack speed, and 30.6 damage. Accounting for the difference in penetration, the Forgotten Gladius does 4.7 damage less than the Shattered Katana. This means that it does 14% less damage than the Shattered Katana. It has the same range, so the only thing that makes up for it is the fact that it has 0.8 attack speed. 0.8 is the fastest of all the medium weapons in the game. The only thing on par that's actually good is the Curved Blade of Winds, which is obviously a legendary weapon, which we are not including in this video. Considering that it's much faster than every other medium weapon, the Forgotten Gladius allows you to have a much greater attack priority, meaning you'll be able to actually hit people a lot more than if you were to use something like a Shattered Katana. It has really good range and it swings really fast, so in terms of actually being able to hit people, this is one of the best weapons to do it. And this means that for a high skill player, this is one of the best weapons. And in my opinion, it's if you're a really good player, like my friend Mad Robot, he uses this weapon, and it's better for him than something like a Shattered Katana. The reason is because with faster weapons, it's much easier for you to do mix-ups and stuff like turning around to whiff your parries. So it's really good for a good player who knows how to take advantage of this. So the Forgotten Gladius is really good. If you're a really good player, then this will be better than Shattered Katana for you. If you don't know how to take full advantage of this, then it may be better to stick with Shattered Katana because it does a lot less damage. And now on to the final weapon, the Riflespear. The Riflespear is a medium weapon that's been rivaling Shattered Katana since the game released, and in my opinion it's been underrated. No one really uses it that often, however people are starting to use it more and more. The Riflespear has 25% penetration, 9 range, 0.68 attack speed, and 34 damage. The penetration and damage are the same as the Shattered Katana, so it's doing the same amount per hits. However, the attack speed and range are different. It has 1 more range, so it's the longest range of any medium weapon, and it has 0.05 less attack speed, so it's really slow. The Riflespear's range can be really useful, as you can be hitting someone outside of your range and be able to keep a distance from them so that they really don't have the opportunity to actually close up to you, considering all the other medium weapons have 8 range. It is a bit slower than the other weapons, so that can be a bit of a problem, especially when you're standing in boxing with a Shattered Katana, or a Sacred Hammer, or Forgotten Gladius user. Now, the biggest advantage that the Riflespear has is not the fact that it has 9 range, or it's not the fact that it does the same damage and same pen as Shattered Katana, it's in fact the critical. The Riflespear critical, in my opinion, is the best critical in the game, and it's also the fastest attack in the game. Think of the fastest mantra, think of the fastest M1, the Riflespear critical is faster. I saw this clip in the Deepwoken Discord, which summarizes just how fast this critical is. The Riflespear critical is less than 300 milliseconds. It's around 270. It has almost no wind-up, so it's pretty much impossible to tell when it's coming, and it has the range of a spear. Basically, this is a guaranteed hit unless your opponent can predict it coming. You have to be really focused to react to and perfectly parry a Riflespear critical. It's really hard. It's probably the hardest attack in the game to parry because of just how fast it is. This can oftentimes lead you to winning a trade because you're able to get a free critical and get that free damage onto them, and you'll be able to mess up their parry and they'll have to commit to a scared parry, which means you'll get an extra M1 onto them. So if your opponent is an auto parrier, then there's like a 50-50 chance that when you press your critical button, you'll get 2 M1's worth of damage for free onto them. Now that alone is incredibly powerful, but there's something else that makes it even better, which is the fact that it procs the talent Bear Trap. Bear Trap is a talent which procs whenever you hit someone with a critical, The thing is, the Riflespear's critical is so fast, and all of the other criticals are really slow, so the bear trap is balanced by the fact that, oh, criticals are really hard to hit because they're really slow. Well, Riflespear critical is really easy to hit, so you can proc bear trap in many situations, and what bear trap actually does is it prevents your opponent from jumping, and it slows down their move speed by a lot for the next few seconds. This makes it a lot easier for you to land a mantra like a strong left right after a critical, and it's really a pain to deal with. Riflespear bear trap critical is what makes this weapon really, really good. So there you have it. There are 4 weapons that you can choose from. The Shattered Katana is a balance between everything. It does the highest damage on hit, and it has decent speed, a bit slower than the base sword. The Sacred Hammer does less damage, 7% less damage than Shattered Katana, and it has the same speed, same range, and its advantage is it has a better crit and better swing animations. The Forgotten Gladius is much faster than the Shattered Katana at 0.8 swing speed, but it does a lot less damage at 14% less damage than Shattered Katana. The Riflespear does the same damage on hit as the Shattered Katana, it has more range, is a decent bit slower, but also has a much better critical, which procs bear trap, and oftentimes leads you to getting a free hit and a free mantra worth of damage. In my opinion, the Riflespear is the best medium weapon in the game right now. The Shattered Katana lost a step from the recent nerfs, especially the attack speed nerf, which makes it slower than the base sword. The Forgotten Gladius is really good for high skilled players who can make use of the extra attack speed. The Shattered Katana is a good mix between all the weapons, and the Sacred Hammer is good for someone who likes to stand and box and make use of the janky animation style. All of these 4 weapons are viable in their own right. However, if my life was on the line and I had to make a build with one medium weapon and I had to win a fight against someone, I would be using the Riflespear. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next one. Peace out.